Hello, everybody. Hello, and welcome to How to Get Hired. I am Bill, the company's expert, as I adjust my mic here. Welcome to this weekly live stream where we talk about how to get hired. Anything to do with careers, job interviews, resumes, job search, networking, all that kind of thing. Thank you for joining me today. This is an interactive live stream, so get in the chat, ask me some questions, and we can interact. Let me know what you're wondering about, what you're struggling with, and I will do my best to help you out. Special thanks to all my YouTube channel members, my Patreons, my super thanks donors, and my participants. Thank you for being here. The title of this episode is A Job Interview is a Pitch. So we're going to be talking about that. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Best answer. We're going to be talking about that too. And this is episode number 93. So let's get started. And as I say, I'll be taking questions. This is primarily the whole point of this thing. But just to lead it off, let's answer those questions or talk about those topics in reverse order. Starting with everybody's favorite job interview question. Another cliched job interview question. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? They've been asking this question for decades and decades and decades. I don't know precisely when they started asking this, but before the 1950s. I know that for sure. Okay, so we're covering this because there's a good likelihood that you will be asked this question in some form in the next job interview you go to. Okay, it's cliched, it's been around forever, but they still keep asking it. This is the future question. It's where they ask you, about the future. As far as you can tell, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Now, there's many forms of the question, okay? They may not use these exact words. They may phrase it differently. They might say, they might ask you about your ambition or, what are your career plans or what are your career goals or, like this kind of stuff. Whichever way you package it, it's the same question. It's a question about the future, and they're wanting a blind prediction from you about the future. Okay, so, what are your long-term career plans? That would be another phrasing of this question. So they may use different words, but they usually ask this question in every single job interview. And there's a very good reason for this, which we'll get into in a moment. What they're trying to do with this question is they're trying to determine if they were to hire you, would you stick around? Seems pretty basic, right? And you'd be surprised how many people fail this question because they basically give away the fact that this is not really what they see as the dream job and the ultimate job of their lives, right? It's kind of unfair in a way because if they're hiring for, let's face it, not exactly a dream job, maybe a crappy job, but then they ask you this question, right? And if you were to say, oh yeah, I plan to leave as soon as I can, then you just eliminated yourself. It doesn't matter how qualified you are. Doesn't matter how perfect you are fit for the role. If you intend to leave the first chance you get, it's not going to work out. So from their perspective, this is another sort of litmus test, like another sort of go, no-go test that they apply to all candidates to see if you pass this, right? Okay, so that's what's really going on here. Now, listen, it's interesting because, everybody loves this sort of psychological wordplay BS that they love to do in job interviews. People don't talk in a very natural way in job interviews, as I'm sure you all know. And when they phrase the question like this, they say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? If you didn't know of this question and you didn't do any sort of preparation for it, and you didn't anticipate being asked this, you'd probably assume that they're looking for a blind prediction from you about your future, which is silly because, the most obvious thing that you don't know at this point is whether you're going to get this job. And whether you do or not, that's kind of going to affect your future, right? So it seemed very strange, right? So it seems weird that they almost expect you to see into the future and tell them what's there. If that's what you're thinking, you could be forgiven to thinking that that's what they're asking, okay? Because that's how this question is phrased. And this is the trap, because they're not actually asking that. Do they expect you to see into the future? No, they don't. They know that you don't know what's going to happen in 5 years, starting with, are you going to be working here or not? They already know that, right? The reason they're asking is because they're trying to find out your motivations, your ambitions, what you enjoy doing, what type of work you enjoy doing, and what you don't, right? And if you disclose that you don't really enjoy doing this type of work, this is not your idea of a good time, this is not what you envision yourself doing for the rest of your life, they're going to interpret that as a fail. Isn't that stupid? It's stupid, but if you were in their shoes and you were hiring someone and you're interviewing a candidate that was qualified for it, but then the candidate admits to you that's like, no, I don't really feel like doing this for very long. I don't really feel like doing this at all, really. My ambition would be to get the hell out of this line of work as soon as possible. Would you be super psyched about having that person on your team backing you up? Probably not, right? So that's what's going on with this question. That's why they ask it. That's what it's meant to reveal. And it's the trap that a lot of people walk into. So hopefully that makes sense. I see there are 20 of you here. Thank you for being here. You guys are awesome. Hopefully you're getting something out of this. Okay, so if you answer this question in any way that indicates that you would rather be doing something else, they're going to interpret that as a red flag. That's how this works. Rightly or wrongly, that's how recruiters are trained to think. How do I know this? Because I trained recruiters in university. That's the theory behind this question. Okay? Now, let's start talking about what a correct answer would be, one that lets you pass this question. Well, if you were to say, if they were to ask you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you were to say, well, I see myself at this company, right? That's a good start, okay? Right? Now, if you were to say more precisely, I not only see myself at this company or this organization, but I see myself in this role, in this job, right? Usually that's a good answer, right? Now we get into another point of uncertainty, and that is that all organizations are different, just like individuals are different. We all have different wants, wills, and needs, and different ideas on what's good and what's bad, right? And organizations, employers, are no different, right? Some employers want you to be ambitious. If you get in there and you say, like, I'm really ambitious, I want to do my job really well, and then I want to get promoted, and I want to work at a higher level, and then I want to get promoted from there, they see that as a good thing, okay? And if you were to indicate that that's the type of person you are or something, they will regard that favorably. Other employers don't see things that way. They see it as, we hired you for this job, and we want you in this job. We're not interested in hiring someone in this role that is going to want to be a manager, right? Or is going to want to do a different job, right? If you want to hire a manager, we're going to hire a manager. If you want to hire someone in this role, maybe a worker level role, then we'll hire a worker, right? So we don't want someone who's going to not be happy in this job, and this job is not their idea of a good time, right? So that's how some employers think. Now, the problem is you don't know who you're dealing with, usually, by the time you get asked this question, and what their culture is when it comes to this stuff. So that's why you got to phrase your answer diplomatically. That's why this is a trick question. Okay? So some employers want ambition, others don't. Okay? So the general rule here, because you don't precisely know what exactly they're looking for beyond the fact that they probably want someone who's going to want to be in this job, keep your answer short. Okay, don't start babbling about, all your long-term ambitions and your philosophy on life and your philosophy on employment, because the more you talk, the more you're likely to say something that they just don't happen to agree with, and then they regard your answer as bad. Okay? It's as simple as that. This is the problem with these types of questions. They're asking you for an answer, but you have no idea what they want to hear, what they value, beyond the fact that pretty much almost everybody who's hiring wants the candidate to want to do the job. Okay? That's pretty much the only thing that's universal. Okay, I'm going to get to questions in a second, but I see that Christian Spear is here. Hello to Kristen. So keep your answer short. Now, the other element that comes into job interviews, and this question is a great opportunity and illustration of this principle, is that conversations are better than interrogations. Maybe you've heard that. I've said that before in videos. Okay? Sometimes you go to a job interview and you just get interrogated. You sit there and they fire these questions at you and you answer, and there's never an opportunity for you to speak freely or tell them anything because they're firing very specific questions at you. How many years of experience do you have? Do you see yourself doing this? Why did you leave your last job? What are your salary expectations? And a series of those, and then, okay, thank you. We'll let you know, right? If your interview goes like that, where it's like an interrogation, it's usually not fun for you, not particularly fun for them, not good for you, and they don't regard that interaction as particularly good, okay? Generally speaking. Now, if you can turn your job interview into more of a free-flowing conversation with your interviewer or interviewers, it tends to go a lot better for you. It tends to be more enjoyable for you, and therefore you're more into it, and that translates to them. They see that you're more, you're not dreading this process. You're having more of a good time. You're a bit more pleasant to interact with, and you have more of a rapport with them, and that only helps you. Okay, they will like you more if you end up having a conversation with them rather than submitting yourself to an interrogation. Okay, now this question, I just said that you want to keep your answer short. Okay, that's what I said a couple minutes ago. So this is a great opportunity to try and turn this question into a conversation. Okay, you don't want to babble. You don't want to talk for a long time. So this is a great opportunity to see if you can get them talking. Okay, now how do we do that? Well, one way to do it is to answer their question, but then you end your answer with a question back at them. So they say, what are your salary expectations? And you say, well, my salary expectations are this. Is that kind of in line with what you guys were hoping? You see, I ended my answer with a question back at them. And then they would then respond, or there'd be pressure to respond to the question I just asked them, which is not on their script. So you start going off script, you start having a free form exchange back and forth, and it turns into a conversation. Right? Now, this question is one of the few questions that are standard job interview questions that are great for this. So you keep your answer short, and then you try and turn it into a conversation. Okay. I'm just looking at my notes here. That's why I'm looking this way all the time. I just jotted some of these down. So how do we answer after all this song and dance? How do we actually answer this question? They say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And a couple of really great answers would be to say, the token answer that traditionally is the answer to this question is to say, I see myself advancing based on my performance and possibly taking on some new responsibilities. Right? How delightfully vague. Right? But you're not saying, I see myself in a different role. You're not saying, I see myself doing something completely different in a new career. You don't say, I see myself being promoted into something else, right? But yet it leaves the gate open for that, right? So whether they care about you having ambition or not, it's usually a very safe answer. Okay, so I will repeat it. They say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And you say, well, I see myself advancing based on my job performance and likely taking on new responsibilities. And this is a great time to turn it into a conversation, to say, ask them about opportunities there, or, do you have any, like the thing that I said in a previous video on this was to say, what are your long-term plans for this department? They asked you, where do you see yourself in 5 years? You say, well, I see myself, advancing based on my performance. What are your long-term plans for this department? Are you expanding? Are you keeping it the same? Do you see it morphing into or evolving into something? Right? And this is a great open-ended question for them to, if they respond to it, then you have a conversation about where things are going, where their operation is going, and how you can contribute to it, and all this kind of stuff, right? Okay, so hopefully this makes sense. This is like several principles all together, right? Number one, it's a trick question. Number two, you don't know if they want you in this specific role forever, or they want you to be ambitious and move on to other things. You don't know that. And because you don't know that, you got to watch what you say. Don't indicate that you would do any other thing, right? Too far from this role. Like if you say, I want to be in a completely different career, right? Like the Monty Python skit, right? I know I'm a banker or an accountant, but I want to be a lion tamer, right? See, everyone knows that. You have to be 104 years old to remember things like that. Right? The concept of the more you talk and you just go off script, the worse it is for you, the more likely you are to say something that they don't like, that they're not looking for, or they regard as bad, unbeknownst to you. Okay? And a conversation is better than an interrogation. So because you want to keep your answer short with this one, it's a great opportunity to fire a question back at them. Something related to what they just asked you, to see if, you can sort of get more information and have them elaborate. And then you could speak to that maybe. So hopefully that makes sense. That's my position on this question. That, in my view, is the best answer. And it doesn't allow them, you will avoid being eliminated by this question, which is basically the whole point of it. Okay, going to the chat here. Amazed is here. Amazed says greetings. So greetings to Amazed. Kristen Spear says, when an interviewer says, tell me about yourself, are they really expecting a pitch with that question? Should your answer to this this predictable first question always be geared toward the job requirements? Short answer, yes, but we are about to get into that. David Gomez says, hello. Hello to David. And a different David, 2007, says, or 007, right on. See, if you were the King of England, your personal bodyguard would probably be a 00, right? As I understand it. Because I know these things, right? David says, is it a suitable answer to say, like a neutral answer? I see myself to be in the specified position, but more skilled and experienced. That's basically yes. Yes. Now, be careful of being neutral, because sometimes, let me back up a second. As I'm sure you guys know, if you've ever been to a job interview before, which I'm sure most of you have, a job interview is quite possibly one of the most artificial exchanges that you will ever have with anyone in your life. It's the most opposite thing from keeping it real that you will ever participate in. Okay? And this is coming from a CEO. CEOs generally are high-level experts at not keeping it real. Yeah, it's totally artificial. Everything is crafted. Everything is rehearsed. Everything is, very strategically phrased, right? There are some times when you want to be neutral, because they're almost trying to ambush you. They're asking you a trick question where if you say a lot of maybe obvious things or things that most people would say if they were keeping it more real, you walk into a trap. You say something that they regard as a bad answer, and in the worst case scenario, that eliminates you right there and then, sudden death, right? You are no longer someone they're considering for the role, okay? Other times, you don't want to be neutral. You want to give them absolutely compelling reasons or say something very impactful, right? Like, for example, if they said, what can you bring to this role or something like that, that's when you would not want to be neutral, right? So I just want to make sure that, yes, in this question, it's more of a neutral, safe answer that you give, but don't extrapolate that to generally speaking, we want to be neutral. That's not what I'm saying at all, okay? What we want to do here is we want to deflect their trick question, and then we want to get them to go off script and start talking all about the role, all about their plans, all about how things work here, right? Because that's when you can really shine, right? By responding to some of that stuff. Okay. Best case scenario, you say, what are the, they say, what's the question? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? You say, I see myself advancing based on my job performance. Can I ask, what are your plans for this department or this operation? And they may say, well, in the future, we expect it to expand a bit. We're going to be adding a few people here. They say, oh, that's really interesting. Are they in any specific areas, or are they in this role? Right? Is it more of people in this role, or is it specialized areas? And they say, well, more specialized things, like people that have skills in AI or something, whatever thing. And you say, well, that's great, because I actually have a lot of skills in AI. So that's very exciting times, and I feel I could probably really help you guys with that. So then you get points, right? You get them to reveal something about the job, you speak to it, you got some bonus points. Most candidates won't have scored those bonus points by this point in the interview. They would have just answered this question, which is meant to be a trap. Best case scenario, they wriggle out of the trap, but they don't score any bonus points. It's like one of those stupid cards they give you at the store, right? You go to the grocery store, they give you a card, it gives you bonus points, right? That's just like this. Don't believe anyone who tells you different. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. If anyone has any questions about this questions about a question, let me know. Because I'm here to talk forever about stuff like this. If I could throw in more comedy, maybe that would enhance it. But then it would just get too real for a lot of people. They might not be able to handle it. Okay, so I'd like to move on to the main topic of today's stream, which is the title of the stream. The first thing that's mentioned is a job interview is a pitch. And Kristen was asking about this a moment ago, okay, with reference to the question, tell me about yourself, okay? Now, what I'm saying is that not only is the question, tell me about yourself, a little bit of a pitch, it's the entire thing. It's the entire interview. Okay? Now, let me explain. Some of you guys, you come from maybe sales, maybe customer service background, maybe a background where, you've worked in the capacity of someone who has to interact with a lot of other people as part of your job. Maybe you're a coordinator. Maybe you get on the phone and you coordinate events, or, figure out, what's going on with some aspect of a company's operations, and, involve lots of people, and, get problems solved and get bugs worked out and all this kind of stuff. So you understand, interacting with people and all this kind of stuff. That's great. A lot of you guys, you're probably like me. You are, first of all, introverts. Therefore, although you can do social interaction, it's probably not your idea of a good time, right? Talking to new people that you've never met before for work is probably not the super fun thing for you that it might be for more extroverted people, okay? Believe me, I know. In addition, you might be more of a technical type person. Your skills are more in a technical area, rather than in the sort of touchy-feely people area, right? Okay? Now, if you check those two boxes, you're an introvert, you're a technical person, okay, my heart goes out to you. I'm that person too. Okay? You're probably the type of person that regards going to a job interview as a waste of time. Okay, these are the types of people, they leave comments and on my YouTube channel and other people's YouTube channels and all over the internet saying, why would I waste my time talking to you? Right? Well, I can tell from that comment that you've never worked as a salesperson. Right? Not that that's a bad thing. I'm just saying. Okay? Why am I talking about all this crap right now? I'm talking about this because it's directly relevant to succeeding in a job interview. Okay? There's a couple of principles you got to know. Okay? You guys heard of something called the spotlight effect? I'm sure a lot of people have heard of this. This is where everybody is under sort of the delusion that it's all about them all the time, right? You're the most important thing in your life, therefore you must be the most important thing in other people's lives, right? You can look it up. Look it up on Wikipedia. It's called the spotlight effect. This is the thing that leads to most people failing job interviews, okay? They don't understand the perspective of the recruiter or the hiring manager or whoever is on the other side of the table in a job interview. They don't understand their perspective. So you don't have a very objective view of yourself, okay? I started out like this, and I'm not going to lie to you and say that I've completely solved the problem. I don't think anyone has, but I've recognized it. I understand these concepts, okay? Now, if ever you've had a chance in your life to be the person hiring, okay, like the example I always bring up is someone who has to get the help of someone to move their furniture. Maybe you're moving from one apartment to another or one house to another or whatever, and you need to move your stuff, right? And you can't carry it all yourself. Maybe you're the type of person that likes to play on 4 grand pianos that you own, right? That would cost a fortune, I imagine. I don't know if you can you get grand pianos for cheap? Like if they're made out of plastic or something? I don't know. But they're too heavy for you to move. So you need someone else to come and move them. And you can't do it alone. So unfortunately, you have no friends. So you have to hire a stranger. So you post a job and you're interviewing people and you're interviewing these candidates, right? And some of the candidates are highly qualified. They're big and strong and they've moved stuff before. And they might have good communication skills. Like you can talk to them, they understand you, they talk to you, you understand them, right? And in the process, you don't misinterpret what they say. You don't end up getting really pissed off, because they told you something, but they told you in what you perceive to be a very rude way. You know what I'm saying? Maybe they didn't intend it to be rude, but it comes across as rude to you. Those would be bad communication skills, right? So these people are fine, right? But the problem is that they think it's all about them. So they say, I can pick stuff up, I can move stuff. I can communicate with you and I'm reliable, But why would I want to do this? Like this isn't a very sophisticated type job. I'm capable of much more. This is almost beneath me to do, Now already, if someone said that to you, would you be having warm fuzzies about hiring that person? Probably not, right? And this is the problem with a lot of technical introverts when they go to job interviews. They have no conception of how you're coming across. These people are not simply looking for someone who's qualified. That's where it begins. What they're looking for is someone who A, wants to work here, B, will be reasonably fun to deal with, at least enjoyable or at least tolerable. But you're hoping for more than that. You're hoping for someone you get along well with. That's a pleasure to deal with. That would be much more desirable when you're hiring someone to move your stuff. If it's someone that you don't want to talk to because you fear that you might piss them off and they might get upset, and be very intimidating, that's not the person you want to hire, right? Right? So there's a lot of psychological things that they're looking for here, right? That you may not be tuned into. Okay? So the job interview is a pitch. It's basically you saying, you're communicating this between the lines. You're saying, look, Mr. or Madam Recruiter or hiring manager, you need to forget all those other candidates, okay? They're no good, right? They're not the best. You want to forget them and you want to hire me. I'm the best. And here's why, right? That's really what you're saying to these people. You're not just answering questions, yeah, I'm qualified. Yeah, I can communicate. Because they've just talked to 6 people in a row that are qualified and can communicate, right? The job interview is a pitch. It's you basically giving them reasons to hire them. You're saying something like, look, I've helped 5 people move before, and they've all given me rave reviews. Not a single item of theirs was broken or lost or damaged, right? And they never at any point were confused as to where their stuff was at any point in the process. They were never confused at all. No confusion whatsoever about what the plan was, when things are going to arrive, in what order, and then what's going to happen to them when they do arrive. Am I going to unload them? Is somebody else going to unload them? So I always got rave reviews from the 5 people I've helped move previously, and they not only had to move 4 plastic grand pianos, which I know that you're so fond of, they had to move 4 plastic replicas of James Bond vehicles. Have you ever tried to move a plastic Aston Martin? Not easy. So, if you give them reasons like this and they go, okay, now you're looking like the top of the pile. You're looking like my first choice. Because not only are you qualified and, I can communicate with you, but it seems like if I hired you, you'd do a great job. And there wouldn't be any issues, there wouldn't be any hiccups, and it would be smooth sailing, right? So that's really the type of thing you want to communicate in a job interview. That's the whole purpose of it. Okay? So that's the point I wanted to make. So coming all the way back to my good friend Kristen. I don't know if you're still here, Kristen, because it's taken me like half an hour to answer your question. But you were asking about the question, tell me about yourself. Is it really a pitch? Yes. Yes, it is. Now let's pretend during your answer to that question, you like my other angle here, my artsy Dutch angle here. In addition to answering this question, let's say you talked about something mundane, right? Like it wasn't directly related to what you're going to be doing in the job. And, they said like, tell me about your family or tell me about your, your day this morning or something like that. It's not directly relevant. But in the process of doing that, you are showing them how personable you are, how easy you are to deal with, how pleasant a conversation can be with you, right? And the implication is that if they hire you, they're going to have to communicate with you and interact with you. And when they interact with you, it's going to be this pleasant. Not only that, you're very professional. You don't say anything inappropriate. It's pleasant, it's professional. And they see that, hey, if a customer saw you working here or interacted with you working here, you would be representing the organization in a very professional way. You look professional, you act professional, you sound professional. You would make us look good, right? So you're basically saying through body language and by implication, this is what I can do for you. This is what I bring to the table. It's a pitch, right? Even if you're talking about something unrelated, you're still signaling stuff like this, not to mention the quality of your communication skills. Or your awareness of like, okay, I've spoken for 1 minute straight. Now I should probably let them have a turn. You get that. You understand that. Okay, great. You're making a good impression. Okay. Now I responded to David earlier, I believe, a neutral answer. I see myself to be in the specified position for more skill. Okay, that was the previous question. M. Poe says, hi, what about tests corporations use on the interview process? Those tests has nothing to do with the job specific, are more of a kind of psychological test or something. For example, for Honeywell, where can you solve these type of tests? Where can I find appropriate? Okay, I'll get into that in a second because you're asking about something different. David Gomez says, your advice is golden, and thanks to you sharing your knowledge, I was hired at a job I love and respect. I got promoted 2 weeks ago and absolutely enjoy my job and the high pay as well. Well, that's great. That's great to hear. I'm glad you're prospering, David, and it's very nice of you to come and give me this kind of feedback. So that's awesome. Okay. So anyway, let's get back to the whole job interview as a pitch thing, because I want to say my piece on this, and then we'll take questions about the various other things people are asking about. Okay, so let me put it to you this way. When you go to buy something, okay, you go to the store and you want to buy something, it's about you. It's not about the thing, okay? You want to buy, a bottle of Coke or something, or you see a commercial for Coca-Cola, right? What do they talk about in the advertisement or the promotional item for Coca-Cola? They talk about the benefits to you of having Coca-Cola, right? Whether you're a Coca-Cola man or a Pepsi-Cola man, and it's pronounced Pepsi-Cola, just for the record. It's about like how good you're going to feel drinking Coke, how refreshed you will feel. It'll give you that little caffeine buzz. It'll make you work a little faster, talk a little faster like me. Right? It's all about the benefits that you're going to get, okay? You don't see in a promotion for Coca-Cola, you don't see them talking about how it benefits Coca-Cola if you were to buy their product, right? They don't say, buy our product. That way we can reach our goal of making $50 billion this quarter instead of the 49 we made last quarter, right? Wouldn't you like to be a part of that? Of course you would. So help us out, right? That's not going to convince anyone. It's all about benefit to them and not to you, right? So that's what a job interview is. The job interview isn't about you. It's about saying, what benefits will you get if you choose me, right? That's why it's a pitch. It's very easy to do this. All you do is you start talking about the things that you can do for them. So if you have skills in a technical area, you talk about how you can use that to benefit them, right? You have certain abilities, you have certain people skills, whatever, you can bring all that to bear to benefit them. What does that mean? That means you're benefiting them by doing your job effectively, efficiently. Your, the frictional stuff that happens in the course of doing your job, like they have to deal with you. They have to explain things to you. They have to get explanations from you, right? All of that will not only be efficient, but it'll be enjoyable. You will enjoy dealing with me. I will bring a smile to your day, and after every interaction with me, you'll go away thinking, feeling just that little much happier, right? You have faith in the future of humankind after having dealt with me, right? Like there's technical, tangible stuff there, and then there's all this touchy-feely, intangible stuff, right? Okay? That's the biggest thing you can do in a job interview, is have them go away at the end of the interaction feeling, that wasn't a chore at all. I enjoyed talking to that person. As opposed to the alternative, which most of us get on a regular basis, where you talk to somebody and you think, if I don't see that person ever again in my life, it'll be too soon, right? Nobody likes feeling like that. Nobody likes conflict. Nobody likes confrontation. Nobody likes, frustration. Nobody likes, any of that stuff, right? So, you're basically demonstrating to them, this is what it's going to be like if you hired me, right? You see how this is going? How easy this is and how fun this is? That's what it's going to be like if you pick me, right? So you got a big smile on your face. Even though you probably feel like killing yourself, you have a big smile on your face. You know, they say something that they think is funny and you go, oh, ha, ha, good one, right? You know, even though you want to just throw up a little in your mouth. Right? Am I allowed to say this kind of thing? I wasn't allowed to say this kind of thing as in my capacity as an executive. This is the great thing about YouTube. Okay, so hopefully you're understanding like a bit of, what's going on here, right? Okay, and then if you get a little more sophisticated, instead of doing this thing where you just demonstrate your people skills, your professionalism, your communication skills, how you can have a rapport with people, how you can represent your organization professionally. It starts with not showing up in sweatpants, right? Things like that, right? And saying what you know, what you have, what you've done, right? Like, so I know I have this skill. I know how to do this. I have this educational qualification and I have this experience. I've done this for 5 years. So I know how to do that, right? That's kind of where it starts. Where it goes on to is being able to say, I can do this for you. In my last job, I did this kind of work. And I've observed how in the past, people weren't taking advantage of some of the tools that are freely available to do this kind of work. And unlike my predecessors and my coworkers, I actually availed myself of some of the latest software tools or techniques or organizational methods or whatever. And I brought those to the work that I do. And that enabled me to be much more efficient and to be able to tack on this capability. That's what I can do for you. If you guys are looking to go in that direction, I have the skills to do that, right? And I can bring all that experience and talent that I have for doing that here, right? It's a pitch. You're giving them reasons to pick you instead of somebody else. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. Now let's go back to some of the questions here because people were asking about everything under the sun, which is good. You haven't asked me for my measurements yet, but maybe that's coming. Okay. Now, getting back to MPO here. MPO is asking about tests they give you in job interviews. Okay. Yes, this is a known thing. Okay. And as we go into the future for worker level jobs, there will only be more of these, I'm sorry to say. I think that in most cases they're misguided, but the way HR and recruitment is going, like recruitment and selection, is they're embracing this stuff even more as we go into the future for a variety of reasons. The biggest reason is that they don't know how to assess somebody, so they don't want to take the risk of, saying, I think this person is good, and then having them quit or having them turn out to be a dud, like they're a terrible employee and they have to be let go. So instead, they fall back on some of these tests so they can turn around and say, hey, it wasn't my fault. We gave them the standard test and they did well. Blame the person who made the test that every other company is using, right? You see how that works? So you're going to get these. You're going to get tests in technical areas. You're going to get psychometric type tests, okay, where they try and find out what type of person you are, what personality type. Do you like working on 49 things at once, or can you only work on one thing at once and focus like a searchlight, and then if someone gives you a second thing, you get overloaded and freak out, right? They're wanting to know stuff like that. Okay. Now, MPO continued and said, where can you solve these types of tests? Where can I find appropriate answers? Well, for personality tests, there is no answer to it. There's no right or wrong answer. It's who you happen to be. Now, sometimes they're looking for, say, an introvert. Sometimes they're looking for an extrovert. Sometimes they're looking for people that can work all day, every day, without seeing another living soul. For some people, that would be heaven. For other people, they're in living hell. Other roles, like outside sales roles, for example, they're looking for someone who every day is meeting 50 new people and having to sell them on something. For some people, that would be heaven. For other people, like me, that would be living hell, right? So there's no like cheat code for how to answer a personality test, like if that's what you're asking. It depends on a million things. The only thing you can really do for that is like, look, does it make sense to lie on a personality test if they're looking for an extrovert and you're not an extrovert, but you're an introvert? But they hire you. Would you enjoy that job? Would you do well in it? Probably not. You'd probably be counting down the hours till you quit. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if it makes sense to try and even cheat, to try and cheat on those kind of things. But whatever. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. Those kinds of tests are graphical or related to maths. Well, if they're related to maths, maybe learn maths, right? It's obviously a technical type of evaluation they're giving you. How can I possibly prepare myself for this kind of tests? Like a test based on math? How could you possibly prepare yourself for that? I don't know. That's a head scratcher. I don't know. Maybe learn math? I don't know what you're going for, MPO. Let's see. Do you have any suggestions how I could successfully pass those kinds of written graphical tests that you've told me are related to maths? How would you kindly provide a hint at least? Thanks in advance. Okay, well, look. First of all, I don't recommend that people take this approach, okay? I think this kind of strategy to get a job this way is a losing strategy. If you don't have the technical ability to pass the kind of tests that they're giving you for those jobs, okay, and they're increasingly giving you more of these tests, at least that's the trend, I would get a job through networking. I would really, it's so much easier than doing all this kind of crap. Like you're trying to learn math that you don't know to get a job. I mean, that begs the question, would you be able to do this job if they feel that you need to do this level of math and you can't do it? That would be the obvious question to me if I were in your shoes. But I would get around, I wouldn't try and beat them at this game. I would go around the game by doing networking. In the end, they hire you because they know you and they know that you're a known quantity. You're the only candidate that they've met. You're the only candidate that they've had a conversation with. You're the only candidate that they've interacted with in a situation other than a job interview, which, as everyone knows, is a completely artificial exchange where most people are either lying or exaggerating or both. Okay? That's why they would hire you, because you're a known quantity. They've dealt with you before, right? Okay, so I would look into networking on demand. I've talked about that extensively on my channel. If you are interested in taking that approach, I've got some free videos, but it's all right here if you want it, all in one place, principle by principle, beginning to end, right? With templates, etc. Okay, if you're looking to go in that direction. That is how most people get good jobs. As opposed to posting a job and then you go in with 1,000 other candidates and you try and elevate yourself above the crowd and there's 1,000 other people there, right? I would not take that approach because it's the law of diminishing returns, in my opinion. You see, sometimes, okay, the other factor here with what you're talking about is that employers, because they get 1,000 candidates, right? Like that's not unheard of, okay? I mean, it's not typical still, but it's not unheard of. How do you filter out a lot of those candidates? Well, one thing you can do is you can put them through an endless series of tests, you know, that they may have to do online. You get them to jump through a lot of hoops. Now you got to attend this automated screening call with our automated AI system. Okay. Now you got to attend this video call with our computer, right? You got to put your face in the, in the video, and we scan it, and then the AI listens to your responses and records them. Like whatever, questionnaires, psychometrics. They'll do this simply to see who quits because it's too much work. Now, let's say that's your process. You put everyone through a barrage of things they got to do. Those 1,000 candidates that applied, maybe they're filtered down to only 50, because only 50 people did the screening call, the video call, the psychometrics, and the online technical questionnaire, right? So now you got a pool of 50 candidates, and these are candidates that you can conclude are at least somewhat interested in this job because they went through all this work to put themselves forward for it. You filtered out the people that couldn't be bothered to do any of this stuff, right? So it's almost like you're testing for enthusiasm or dedication, how much they want it, right? And that's why they do it. Not because the tests themselves yield any particular value in themselves. There's no intrinsic value, but just the fact that you got through them and you're still interested, right? That's another thing that's going on there. Okay, where am I here? Let's see here. Oh, this goes on. Okay. Toby says, hi, thank you for sharing tips on job search. I had an interview last week. An interview last week. They asked me, what's your tolerance for ambiguity? This question seems unusual to ask for a job interview. No, it isn't. And I've done a video on it. Go and check out a video I did. The thumbnail, like the picture says, this question eliminates noobs. That's what it's called. And its title is what you just said. What's your tolerance to ambiguity? Best answer. The short version is, this is a very common question for management type interviews. Okay. Now at the worker level, it's not super common, but at a management level, this is like the sort of, why do you want to work here type question. Like it's common, right? Do I have time for this? Let's see. Okay. What's going on with that question is ambiguity. If you come from like a science background or engineering background, any kind of technical background, you know that ambiguity is bad. You want precision, right? So you might be tempted to say, I have a low tolerance for ambiguity. I want things to be very precise. I want results to be accurate. I want deadlines to be accurate. I want expectations to be accurate. I don't like a lot of, wishy-washy room for interpretation in everything that I do here. And in the results that, I produce. Ambiguity is bad, right? Well, if you say that, you fail the question, because this is another trick question. What they mean by asking this question, which is stupid, but it's how it's meant, is if your boss gives you instructions and every little detail isn't specified, there's some play there, some leeway to interpret it in different ways. Are you okay with that? Are you okay working in an environment where they don't have policies and rules for absolutely everything? You've got to just kind of sort of go with the flow and figure it out. Are you okay with that? That's what they mean when they ask this question, and they phrase it in this retarded way. Okay? So the correct answer is, I have a high tolerance for ambiguity. I actually like it when my boss doesn't spell out my tasks to the nth degree, because I like being given the opportunity to decide how I'm going to do something and to what degree I'm going to do something, because that's an opportunity for me to show off my strengths and my good judgment. And when I'm given tasks like this, I usually shine. I decide what needs to be done. I decide how to do it. I get it done. And people recognize my value because it's done correctly and I made the right calls. So I got a high tolerance for ambiguity. The more ambiguity, the better. Okay, that's how you answer that question in the management interview. David Gomez says, I'm a Coca-Cola man. That makes me talk faster as well. David, I got you beat. Red Bull. Oh, yeah. Okay, Space Tour says, thanks for the knowledge you provide always. How about if you're going to interview where you have only 50 to 60% of the qualifications asked by the employer, but I'm sure I can learn the rest? Okay, here's the deal. So if you're interviewing and you only have 50 to 60% of the qualifications, that means that they saw from your resume and your job application that you only have 50 to 60% of the qualifications, or you basically, assuming you didn't lie outright and say that, oh yeah, I have this thing when you don't, right? Assuming you didn't do that. You might have exaggerated, you might have, kind of obfuscated some things, but you didn't actually outright lie, okay? What that signals is that what you have, this 50 to 60% of the qualifications that they listed as qualifications, that shows that the other 40 to 50% of the things they listed were not actually requirements. They were maybe nice to haves, but they were obviously not a showstopper or a deal breaker if you don't have them, right? Because they called you down for an interview anyway. It doesn't make sense for them to call a candidate in for an interview who is not qualified to do the job. Like, it doesn't make any sense. The only people you will bring in for interviews are people that on paper are technically qualified to do the job. The only thing you want to know now is, what are they like as people, right? All the stuff that's not on a resume, like your ambition and, your communication skills and your professionalism and, your people skills. Like, that's what they're wanting to go deeper now and see how you do on those things, right? So don't worry about it, because they've signaled that not having that 40 to 50% of the stuff they listed is okay. All you have to do is make sure that you communicate to them in some way that the fact that you don't have that 40 to 50% qualifications is not going to be a problem. Okay? So you say, well, I haven't actually done that before, but I have done this that's very similar and I handled it no problem. Or I don't actually have that, but I've spent the last 5 years working with coworkers that all have that. And I've seen how they've applied that knowledge, and I've been able to do the same thing. So I'm not worried about not having that experience. I feel I can handle it. Or if you look closely at my previous jobs, you'll see that all of those jobs, I didn't have all of the technical qualifications that they usually look for those jobs, but I've shown that I'm very highly trainable and that I can learn those skills extremely quickly. And not only I can outperform in that environment after having learned those skills and picked them up very quickly. So I'm not worried about the fact that I don't have this on day one. I've been in situations where there's been much steeper requirements that I've had to learn very quickly, and I've been able to rise to the challenge. So I'm not anticipating any problems with that. Something like that, right? All you have to do is just convince them that even though you don't have those things, it's not going to be an issue. M. Poe says, this situation is very frustrating for me because I have more than 15 years experience in procurement and cannot pass this part of maybe psychological kind of test, but nobody cares about my experience. The funny thing is that I have what? Master? Like, you mean masters in psychology, and those tests are just not fit for my kind of work. Okay, here's the deal. This is what I'm getting from what you're saying there, Empo. You feel that you have the technical skills to do the job in question. But you find them giving you these psychometrics and psychological tests that you know for a fact that you don't pass, or you suspect you don't pass, okay? Or you're just not being hired and you don't precisely know the reason, so you're theorizing why you haven't been hired in it, okay? Here's what I would recommend, okay? There's a couple of things you can do. First of all, the best thing I think you could do, or that would help you in this, would be to have an informational interview with either someone that's currently in the role that you're trying to get, or the boss of someone currently in the role that you're trying to get, or a hiring manager that would hire someone for the role you're trying to get. And you could ask them honest questions and say, like, look, I'm just trying to learn. Like, when it comes to these types of workers, like, what do you consider the most important trait, or the most suitable type of personality, or the best work style, or the best communication style, or if you had two subordinates that had a conflict, they disagreed on something, how would you prefer them to resolve that? Would they talk to each other, or would they suppress it, or would they talk to their boss, or, like that kind of stuff? Like, get their take on what their expectations are for someone in that role. Okay. Now, that would be a perfect scenario. If you're going to do this, you might as well go all the way, since you're talking to this person anyway, and get jobs using informational interviews. Like, that's how a very popular method of getting jobs through networking, right? Is you reach out to someone and say, hey, I'd just like to learn from you. And then you go down and you ask them a bunch of questions about how they do their job and what they look for, and, where things are going. And, you know what I mean? And you get all this information. And that's like an avenue for them to hire you, right? I mean, there's a whole mechanism on how to do that. I can't get into it here, but that would be the ultimate thing. And then you would get insight into what these people are looking for. And then you'd be able to have more intelligence on why they're not hiring you, what area maybe you need to either improve in, or you would have to tack on to impress these people, whether that makes sense or not. Right? You see, like I've said before, you could be the most qualified person in the world. You could be Albert Einstein. You could be the smartest, most trainable, most brilliant employee ever. But there are certain psychological things that will immediately neutralize that. Okay? One would be, if you don't want to do this job, you feel this job is beneath you, the first chance you get, you're leaving for something better, or you're only here so that you can try to get promoted to get up into a job you consider actually desirable. That eliminates you as a candidate. Doesn't matter how competent you are, how qualified you are, doesn't matter. Alternatively, if you are so off-putting as a person, maybe you're technically brilliant, but when they talk to you, they feel like you're rude, you're impatient. They come away from their interaction with you feeling frustrated, confused. They wish they hadn't spoken to you. They don't want to speak to you again. If that's the effect you have on people, especially your boss, that's a deal breaker. It doesn't matter how brilliant or how qualified you are. That eliminates you, right? So you see, these psychological things, I know they're annoying, and trust me, there is a lot of BS there. But it's not all BS. There's some pretty damn important elements there that have to be there, okay? If they give you a job and you have to, work in as part of a team or something, and, you have to interact with several other coworkers, not your boss, but people at the same level as you, your peers, and you all have to get consensus on what you're going to do and how you're going to work together, and then work together smoothly, right? So that nobody gets pissed off and nobody, has a nervous breakdown and nobody quits, right? But let's say you're technically brilliant, but you can't collaborate with people, or you can only collaborate with people who are exactly like you. You can't collaborate with a person who's like non-technical, or, you know what I mean? Like, that would be a deal breaker. If that's what the job requires, and, you're the type of person that's going to go nuts when put in that situation, or you're going to drive them nuts, or your coworkers nuts, you've eliminated yourself, right? So there are certain things in the whole psychological domain that are very important, okay? You know what I'm saying? And if you've ever been on the other side of the table, or if you ever get to be on the other side of the table, which most people will be at some point in their lives, okay, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Whoever you hire, you got to work with. And if they're an absolute misery to work with, doesn't matter how brilliant they are, no deal, right? You want to, life is for the living. It's for the enjoyment. You don't want to surround yourself with the most miserable gang of bastards you ever encounter in your life, so that every day you come to work and you want to jump off a cliff by the end of the day or by noon, right? So this stuff is important. It is important. It doesn't seem like it's important, but it's actually one of the most important things. Okay, so do your own research into this stuff. Don't take my word for everything. Go and look into this stuff. Go into what are people looking for in an employee? What are the soft skills that they need to have? How would you go about demonstrating those soft skills or convincing someone that you have them, right? Like, go and do that kind of work. It may feel like beneath you. It may feel like silly, if you've been doing the job for 15 years. But if this is what's standing in your way, it's well worth swallowing your pride for just a second and opening your mind and looking at this stuff. Okay? Where did I leave off here? David 007 says, how much can you exaggerate on your skills or qualifications in your CV or on the interview, or shouldn't do that at all? Okay. Oh, excellent question, David. You're really putting the screws to me here. When you ask a typical recruiter this question, what do they say? They say, oh, you shouldn't exaggerate at all. You should just be completely honest. Authenticity, right? Right? That's the buzzword, right? Authentic. You have to be authentic, right? Because that sounds very forthright, right? So the next job interview you go to, when you get in the room and you shake hands and they say, hey, how are you doing? And you say, oh, I feel like crap. I hate being here. And I really wish I hadn't had to meet you today, right? Because that's what you're feeling, right? And if you're expecting a standing ovation for being authentic, I don't know, you call me kooky, call me crazy, you might not get it, right? So when you go to the interview and you feel like crap, you feel nervous as hell, you just want to run screaming from this place, and you have to meet this person and you're thinking, oh, for Christ's sake, I don't want to talk to you. They say, hey, how you doing? You say, oh, I'm doing great. It's a pleasure to meet you. Thank you for having me here, right? That's what you say. So yes, is that a lie, or is that an exaggeration, or is that just being diplomatic? I'll let you decide that one. Now, when it comes to your qualifications, okay, I think most people would agree there is a line that you don't cross, okay? Like, for example, they say, are you a licensed accountant in this geographic region who has a current valid license? If you don't have that license and it's not valid, you don't say yes, right? Right? That's crossing the line. That's an outright lie. It's a misrepresentation of something pretty important, right? Do you have a medical degree so that when we hire you as a heart surgeon, you know what you're doing? You don't say yes when you mean no, obviously, right? Now, exactly where you draw the line, you talk to different people, you get different answers, right? I think we can all agree on a sort of like, there's a line before an outright lie about something important, okay? I think we can all agree with that. But where you draw the line, I'm not going to sit here and tell you here's the exact place where it is, okay? Because it's very fuzzy and it's very gray. Like, for example, let's say you don't have a technical qualification or a certificate or something. Maybe you took the course, but you left the company like a day before they were going to give you your certificate. You completed all the work, but you didn't get it. Do you say you have it? If it's something important that's regulated, accredited, I would say you have to be honest, say, technically no, but I do have all the skills and learning of it, right? If it's something minor that, every company has their own policy on, conceivably, you might even say yes to that because it's a de facto yes, right? And if they ask you for more information or they make further reference to it, then you can maybe explain because there's a story behind it, right? If they never actually ask you for more qualification, maybe there's no opportunity to give the explanation. It's a judgment call, right? The bottom line, though, is that if you lie about something that you just can't do or you're unwilling to do, it doesn't really work out in the end, really, because if the job requires it and it's important and you don't have it and you can't fake it, you know what I mean? Like, you're not going to succeed in that job. So, I mean, that's all I can say. That would be under the umbrella of business ethics, okay? And there's all kinds of theories and, like that people operate on, right? The only thing I will say that's a little bit of a gray area for some candidates, but it's an absolute line in the sand for recruiters, is if you are in a program to get a qualification, like to get an educational qualification, don't say that you have the educational qualification. So let's say you're in third year of medical school. Don't say that you've done medical school, you've finished it. What you would do is you'd say, like, I'm a medical school candidate, something like that, right? If it's a 5-year program, you're 2 months away from completion, don't say that you've done it, then that you have it. Because if they find that out, they're very, very strict about that kind of thing. So you would say, I am an engineering candidate or I'm an MBA candidate, right? That's the term you use to show that you're doing it, but you haven't quite finished yet. Okay, M. Poe says, I confirm that there is no intrinsic value for those kinds of tests in my procurement activity. Anyway, thanks for your answers. You're welcome. Space Tour says, thanks a lot. I did clearly let them know that I'm not familiar with programming language that they are asking for, but I have experience in the work environment and they were still interested. I mean, okay, like maybe I'm a relic. I'm an old fossil, an old fogey. But I remember the days when you had like one computing language and, you'd done extensive work in that one language, but you didn't actually have the second computing language that they do most of their work in. People would still hire you because, all computing languages are very, very similar. You know what I mean? And if you all understand all the principles of programming, you know what I mean? Shifting to a different language is not this insurmountable thing that takes you 20 years to do. You know what I mean? But maybe I'm just a relic of a bygone era. I'm not sure. That's how it seems to me. Standing on the sidelines, looking at the software development industry. There's a lot of things you can do there. There's a lot of entrepreneurial stuff you can do there too. If you're not employed and you're doing a job search, you can do certain things on the side that like demo your abilities, right? I've talked about that in the past. Mike Dixon says, deal or no deal. I don't know what that's reference to. But I like the sentiment. Mehdi Daif says, thank you for the priceless info. You're absolutely welcome, Mehdi. And I'm sure I completely bastardized your name, for which I apologize. I'm terrible with names. I got a habit of doing that. I always mispronounce everybody's name. It's unintentional, but it's led to a lot of awkwardness. MPO, this is not my case. I can collaborate with most of people. I even succeeded in difficult specific negotiations, suppliers, clients, project. Look, MPO, I don't know what the specific reason is why they didn't hire you. I'm not sure what the specific thing is they're looking for. They could be looking for something idiotic, right? It could even be something that the recruiters are saying that they look at when they actually don't. It's just a kiss off for why they didn't hire you, and like in 99.9999999% of cases, they don't want to tell you the real reason why they didn't select you. because the real reason is embarrassing. It's either asinine or it's stupid, or it allows people to game them if you knew that they cared about this thing so much, right? So I'm not sure what's going on there. All I'm saying is, you're telling me that they're placing a lot of importance on this. I'm guessing from the types of things you're saying that you don't value that stuff, or you don't respect it. And maybe you're right. Maybe it's all just a bunch of psychobabble bullshit, which, recruiters do engage in a lot. It's sometimes it's a band-aid to try and smooth over the fact that they have no understanding of the technicalities of the jobs that they're hiring for. It could well be that. But if you're telling me that they care about this stuff, all I'm saying to you is look into it. There could be a blind spot. We all tend to have a blind spot about ourselves where we don't recognize turns out, a big weakness that we have. I'm just saying, make sure it's nothing like that. So look at this stuff with an open mind, in case it is valid. Mike Dixon says, I did stay at a Holiday Inn Express. Okay. That's good to know. And I think it speaks for itself. How do you say this? Lysolana Lorwin. That's actually a nice name. Says, I don't understand why recruiters are looking for my engineering license, even if the job I'm applying for is only not even related to engineering at all. All I put is, I graduated in engineering. Well, okay, look, I don't know the details of it. And I just want to preface this by saying there are a lot of stupid recruiters out there that are incompetent and they do dumb things. And they require idiotic things that have nothing to do with anything because they don't understand what the word engineering even means. Okay? So, okay, there are some people like that out there. Not all of them are like that, but there are a lot like that. Okay? Now, if you've said, okay, I went to university and I got an engineering degree, okay, it is a natural question to say, okay, well, in this region, to work as an engineer, you not only need the diploma in engineering, you need a license, like where you do practical work and you study under someone who's a professional engineer and they take responsibility for your work and they recommend you to the industry association, and the industry association issues you a license if you've done 4 years worth of work or something like that, right? Okay, so it's not a stupid question. If you said, like, I went to school for engineering, it's a natural question. Do you have an engineering license that's currently valid? Okay, now if they require that for a job that has nothing to do with engineering, I agree. That sounds like it's idiotic, but I mean, I don't know. I don't know the details of what this job is or what they're trying to do. Okay. Now, look, so Lorwin, just for anyone who's confronting silliness like this, I'm here to tell you that despite the impression you might be getting from the ecosystem of people like me that are talking about, like, how do you get hired? Most of those people are recruiters, okay? They're the ones talking about how to get a job. They're the ones writing articles on how do you get a job, right? And while they have a lot of insight into that kind of thing, there is a bit of a conflict sometimes with them, and that is that they are not going to tell you that most people who get hired don't get hired by going through recruiters. That's a conflict of interest to them. I don't see a lot of recruiters telling candidates, don't go through recruiters. You can get a job much easier by doing this other thing where you don't even go through this process that we're doing, right? In case you don't know, that's networking. More people get hired through networking than get hired through applying for a posted internet job and then talking to a recruiter and then doing job interviews with recruiters. Now, if that sounds weird to you, don't take my word for this. Go out and do your own independent research on this. Find out how most people end up getting hired. right? You will see that that is the reality. But very few recruiters are talking about that because it kind of undermines their whole job, right? So if you're hitting your head against the wall, Lissalana, there is light at the end of the tunnel. Like if everywhere you turn, you see silliness like this, you don't have to necessarily go through these people. If you were to go directly to, say, the head of engineering at a company who's hiring engineers or something, and you're saying like, I'm a kick-ass engineer. If ever you're looking for someone who can do this type of engineering and work in this role, let me know, because I'd love to work for you. I know all about your company. I know you do this kind of work. I think that's absolutely fascinating. I'd love to work in that area. So next time you're looking for someone, give me a call, and that's far more likely to get you a job than sending in a posted job application in response to a job posting that's been posted on like Indeed or something, where like 1,000 people have applied for it, and you don't even know if it's a real job. It could be a fake job, right? And then if it is a real job and they are serious and they do select you to get past the initial screening, then you move on to dealing with people like this, like you described, and they want to know all this stuff that doesn't make any sense, and they're judging you on that, and they're saying, well, based on that, then I'm sorry, you're not a good candidate. It's like, what? Right? So that's what I'll say to that. Toby says, sorry to bother, but seems like one of my questions above has been missed. That's very likely, Toby. I'm sorry. I don't have a very sophisticated technical solution here. I'm using Streamlabs to do the live stream, and their feed keeps jumping on me, and sometimes I don't know that it's moved. You're absolutely right. Okay, so going back a bit, Who Won says, hi, do you have any tips for freelancing interviews like Upwork and the like? No, not especially. I'm not down with like the latest websites and, tools. But all I'll say is that freelancing is a thing. Now you have to have a bit of an entrepreneurial sort of flair, the beginnings of it, to get into that. I think it's great to explore that when you're between jobs. You're out of work anyway. There's only so many hours a day you can devote to job search. So doing this kind of also during that time you're between jobs and exploring this stuff, I think is awesome. It's a really great thing. It also serves a lot of other purposes, like when they ask you, how long have you been out of work, or do you have a work gap? You don't have a work gap because you're freelancing, right? You're making money at it. So it's good for a variety of reasons. But just do an internet search, ask Google, ask ChatGPT, like what are the latest tools, the most popular tools that people are using for being discovered when you offer freelance services and stuff. That's what I do. Toby says, speaking of qualifications, I'd like to ask as well on how you'd be going on an interview if you try to change careers. For example, I know how to do programming and I have previous projects as well. But of course, the other candidates have this qualification as well, and they are more qualified because they graduated on the course required they were younger. Yeah, it doesn't matter too much how qualified different people are. Like, I know that sounds counterintuitive, but the reality is you send in your job application, they make a decision there on how technically qualified you are. And it's, despite what any recruiter or anybody says, it's not like, they don't necessarily hire the most qualified person. That's not how this works. What they do is they make sure you are qualified to do the job. So it's like a go, no-go test. Yes or no. You can't be in between. There's no difference of degrees. It's not a continuum. It's either a yes or a no. Now, if you are qualified, then depending on how many qualified candidates they have, they'll, and maybe it's first come, first serve or something, I don't know. They'll bring in a few for an interview. So like maybe the first 6 who are qualified, according to our determination of who's qualified on paper, we'll bring those people in. If we have the luxury of choice, we have like 40 people that are qualified and we have to choose between them, then maybe we'll bring in the people with the most experience or something like that. They'll have some way of determining it. It completely varies. But once you are selected to come to an interview, then it's no longer about who's the more qualified. Instead, now the game is about who do they like the best? Who do they want to work with the best? Right? It's that's the biggest determining factor. And then the second thing is all the other like risk factors. Like if you don't want to be in this role, you're not interested in doing this role. You're desperate for a job, you're taking it, but you're really not interested in doing this. Or you consider it beneath you, or you've been fired for your last 30 jobs in a row within a month. So it's highly likely that you would be fired if they were to hire you here, right? Those types of risk factors. Okay, so it's up to those factors and then how likable you are. That's what it's about. So if you're at the interview stage, don't be fooled by anything they say. It's not about how qualified you are anymore. It's about how much they like you. All you have to do is assure them that, any kind of purported lack of qualifications is not going to be an issue. They've signaled it's not going to be an issue by inviting you down there, right? So all you have to do is assure them nothing's going to be a problem, maybe with backing that up with some logical way, and get along with them great. Show that you're a great person to work with, that, you're super enthusiastic, you have the right attitude, you're highly professional, highly likable, and that's what'll get you the job. That's the only thing you can do. Beyond that, it's a total crapshoot. You may not, there might be politics going on in the background. You have no idea. You have no control over that. That's the only thing that you can control that will determine whether you're hired or not once you're at the interview. Hopefully that makes sense. So hopefully I answered your question, Toby. I think that was the one you might have been referring to that I missed earlier. M-Po says, thanks for those information shared. Here's some are useful for me. Good. Mike Dixon says, thanks for the info. I've never been on too many interviews. Yeah, well, don't worry about it, Mike. Everyone starts out green with this stuff. We all start somewhere, and the more you do, the more you learn, the better you get. It's just that simple. You're welcome, Lysalana Lorwin. If I had to say your name 5 times in a row, I think I'd do myself an injury. But I think it's a very good name. It rolls off the tongue and it has a lot of dignity to it. So great job. Toby, says, yes, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge here. You're absolutely welcome, Toby. Hopefully that has helped you guys, or some of you guys that have asked questions. Thank you to the people that are here. If you are trying to get hired, you don't know what to do, get that course. That's why I created it. There's a link in the description under this live stream to the course, and also to a video that describes the course with frequently asked questions and all this, so you know precisely what you're getting in. That's where I've put all my advice in one place, principle by principle, process by process, with templates and all that kind of stuff. And it also talks about the networking side of things. It's partly about that. So if you're interested in learning that would be a great way to start. That's where, see, the problem with networking stuff is that you can't explain it in 5 minutes. There's too many principles at play. There's too many things, like you have to understand how things work. So then the recommendations actually make sense, right? You know why you're being asked to do this, and you know the importance of doing this and that, and this kind of thing. So I found that unlike job interviews, it's very hard to teach it on YouTube, because with job interviews, you can break it down by question, these little bite-sized pieces of knowledge, very straightforward. But for networking, it's more of like a big monolithic kind of thing that explains how everything works, and therefore all the different ways in, and all this kind of thing. And I've geared it for introverts. Okay. And basically, I've given you a methodology that I've myself practiced. I've used it to build my consulting business. So, I mean, no one can tell me, oh, I know this doesn't work like that, because I've done it. And I've done it many, 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 many times over years. So check that out if that's the kind of thing you're into, if you're a course type person. I also have this if you want to learn business. And I also have this if you want to take your communication skills into the stratosphere. This is mainly for people who are interested in getting a job at the executive level or the upper middle management level. Usually the thing you have to tack on to qualify for those roles are communication skills. You have to have really high level communication skills. So if you're interested in learning that, check out that course. Other than that, I will be back actually in something like half an hour. I have another live stream called Honest HR Nitrous, where I don't answer specific big questions like I did in this stream, but we talk about some of the idiocy and, the realities of business and employment and careers and how people get selected and, how careers take shape and how they go and all this kind of stuff. The stuff that I feel that a lot of recruiters don't talk about because either they don't know or they don't want to really get into that kind of stuff because it's kind of a conflict with what they're trying to do. So I will be back doing that in half an hour. Thanks to everyone who was here. Thanks to everyone who asked questions. Thank you to Pearl, who's here. Carmiego, as always. You guys are awesome. I wish you nothing but the best. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you soon.